Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. For my Dungeons & Dragons campaign, I needed a Nothic, and it's a pretty difficult miniature to get. But you may have noticed that Nothics look a little bit like aliens, and I happen to have a broken alien from my AVP Hot Landing Zone expansion, so I decided to use it to make a Nothic. And what I did was I clipped off all the pointy parts, the tail, and the pipes on the back. And you can see that it's missing an arm, and that's because it was broken. Which is why I'm using it. And I also, you can see I bored a hole in the front, which is where the eyeball will go, and I cut off a lot of the spiky protrusions and sanded it down. And then I used some green stuff. If you've never seen green stuff before, it looks like this, yellow and blue stuff. And it's a material that you mix together, and then you can use it as a putty, which then sets. You use it for sculpting, filling gaps on miniatures, which is what I normally use it for. But in this case, I'm going to use it to smooth the back of the Nothic, make a arm to replace the one that is broken off, cover over some of the spiky details and some of the more alien-esque details on the miniature, and then put some spikes on its back and make a great big eyeball for the middle of its head. Oh look, it's gone green. So here I am just basically lumping it onto the back, and when it's all done, it's like that. And I've used a piece of resin scenery, a pillar, and I've used more green stuff to make that part of the scenic base, and to cover up all the scientific-y bits on the scenic base of the alien. And you can see that I've not done a very good job of making an arm, because I'm not that good at making stuff with green stuff. But I have a plan to cover that hand up when it's done. It's actually predominantly made from green stuff, and then a little bit from the end of the spitter's tail to give the idea, the sense of fingers and things, which I just couldn't sculpt because I'm not very good with that sort of thing. But here I am. I'm using some more green stuff, and I'm going to make some spines, some spikes to go on the top of the Nothic's head and down its back, sort of like that. I'm using a little metal tool to try and smooth out any of the ugly gaps and things like that. And I keep tinkering with this until I'm happy with the number of spikes, and there he is. That's all of the sculpting done. Pretty easy, straightforward stuff, nothing too complicated there. Mainly just covering things up, particularly on the base, like I say, which had a lot of scientific gubbins, because all of the Alien vs Predator The Hunt Begins miniatures have integrated scenic bases. And now we're going to paint the Nothic, so we're starting with a base coat of black, and then we're going to go to Incubi Darkness, and we're going to thin the Incubi Darkness down, and we're going to apply 2 thin coats to get us a good dark green base for the rest of our colours to go over. There it is with the 2 coats applied. And we're now going to Kabalite Green. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to do a dry brush, which basically means getting most of the paint back off of the bristles of the brush, and then just flicking the brush over the raised details of the miniature. And that's obviously going to pick out the details and create the extra definition. Being careful on across the spines and things, make sure we hit all of the most raised areas. And then we're going to do a Death Guard Green dry brush as well, and this is going to be a targeted dry brush using a smaller dry brush on just the most raised details, the bits that the light would hit the most. And at this stage, it won't look great. It needs some washes just to bring the different dry brushes together, but that's what we will be doing next. As you can see, it looks a little bit, it needs something just to tie those colours together. And I'm actually going to use Thrakka Green for this, but I guess you could use any green wash, or Ulthuan camo shade, I guess would be good. I didn't actually have any Ulthuan camo shade when I did this miniature, otherwise I may well have used that. And as you can see, that just sort of darkens it down again and ties the colours together a little bit more. I'm now going to use some black ink, and I'm just applying this to the tips of the spikes on the Nothic, because looking at the artwork for a Nothic, the spines sort of go a little bit dark towards the edges, and I'm using ink just because it's a little bit easier to control and to blend it the way I want it to go. And it ends up looking something like that. We're now going to Goblin Green, and Goblin Green is to paint the eye. The large single eye of the Nothic. And there it is. Doesn't he look happy? I'm now applying a little bit of Hexwraith Flame just to try and make the eye pop a little bit, look a little bit glowy or a little bit unnatural. Hexwraith Flame's quite good for that. And then I'm going to use a little bit of Flash Gitz Yellow just right in the very centre of the eye. Just sort of define it a little bit more in the very centre. And being very careful using a very fine detail brush. The eye is quite important on the Nothic because it's such a defining feature of it. And there it is, all painted. We're now going to Skeleton Bone because we want to paint that lovely smile that Nothic has. So I'm bracing the miniature against the table, I'm bracing my hand against the table, I'm being very, very careful. I'm holding my breath. Fine details. Because obviously I don't want to get any paint over anything I've already done. But there it is, his lovely smile and his lovely eye. We're now going to Ash Grey because the Nothic itself is finished, but we need to paint the base. So the large scenic pillar that I had on there, I'm just overbrushing that, or wet brushing as I usually call it, which is a little bit like dry brushing, but you need a little bit more paint on the brush. We're then going to give it an Agrax Earthshade wash, just to tone the colours down a little bit, making sure we don't go over the Nothic that we've already painted. This is a technique that I use on pretty much any pillars and ruined scenery and things like that. You may, if you've watched any of my previous painting guides, you'll recognise how I'm painting this pillar. It's something I do frequently. So at this point, yeah, just doing a little dry brush again with the Ash Grey, just to bring the details back up. And then Ulthuan Grey. Just to make the details pop. Now we're using our Astrogranite texture paint, and obviously we're going to paint over the whole base with that, except for the pillar. Ulthuan Grey is my standard highlight for Astrogranite. I just think it looks quite nice. And again, very careful using a small dry brush, making sure we don't dry brush the Nothic's feet or anything else that we've painted. I'm now using Oak Brown, and I will also use Fur Brown for a gradation of tone. And I am just stippling this around the bottom of the pillar. It's just to make it look dirty and blend it a little bit with the ground. And changing to the fur. Fur Brown is just to have a tonal variance as we go up the pillar. And then I have applied some brown flock around the base just to finish it off. And over the top of the pillar, I have used some autumnal leaves scatter. Which seems to fit the tone, the tragic tone of a Nothic, and its tragic life, but also it disguises that hand, which I didn't do a very good job of sculpting. And there we go. That is my Nothic ready for my campaign. And in fact, I've actually already used it. in a Dungeons and Dragons session. I had a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun role-playing it, and I had a lot of fun making it. Like I say, the Nothic miniatures, you can get them, you can buy them, they are available, but I couldn't find one at a reasonable price, and this just happened to be a way that I could do it because I had that broken Aliens miniature from the Hot Landing Zone expansion, and I'm pretty pleased with the result. But that's it. That's everything I have to say. I hope somebody has found this interesting. As always, please leave your comments and queries below. I do my best to respond to everybody, and thank you very much. I will see you all again very soon. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.